$250,000. That was the number on the wire transfer confirmation sitting in the printer tray. Stapled to it was a plane ticket to Zurich for my 16th birthday. Return date. Blank. My stepfather was passed out on the sofa just a few feet away, completely unaware he'd left the evidence right there. They told me I was going to a fancy boarding school, but schools don't pay parents $250,000 to take their kid. I looked at the papers in my hand and realized the truth. This wasn't an acceptance letter. It was a receipt. I put the papers back. My hands wanted to shake, but I forced them still. I aligned the edges of the wire transfer with the corner of the printer tray, exactly how they had been. If Charles woke up and saw a millimeter of difference, he'd know. He was a sloppy drunk, but a paranoid criminal. I pulled out my phone and snapped 3 photos. One of the ticket, one of the transfer, one of the blank return date. Then I backed out of the room, stepping on the same patches of carpet I'd used to enter. Silent. Invisible. Back in my bedroom, I locked the door and sat on the floor, pressing my back against the wood. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my mind was ice. This was how it happened to Alyssa, my cousin, the golden girl. 3 years ago, right before her 16th birthday, she ran away. That was the story Patricia told everyone. She said Alyssa was ungrateful, that she stole money and fled to Europe with an older boyfriend. They even showed us postcards she supposedly sent. I believed them then. I was 12. But now I looked at the photo on my phone screen. The wire transfer was dated 3 years ago. The amount was identical. Alyssa didn't run. She was the first installment. I reached under my mattress and pulled out a small, prepaid burner phone. I'd bought it 3 months ago with cash I skimmed from the grocery budget. Ever since I found a discrepancy in Charles's tax filings I wasn't supposed to see, I dialed the number I'd memorized. It rang once. "Talk to me." A deep voice answered. "It's Mia." I whispered. "It's happening. I have the date." Julian didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't ask if I was scared. He was the private investigator I'd found online. The one man who had believed my suspicions about Alyssa when the police wouldn't listen. "Is the buyer confirmed?" he asked. "Yes. The transfer cleared. $250,000. The flight is in 3 weeks." "Okay," Julian said. His voice was calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. "We don't run, Mia. If you run, they find you. If you run, they get away with it." "I know. We stick to the plan. We turn the sale into a trap. Can you hold it together for 3 weeks? Can you look them in the eye and pretend you're excited about boarding school?" I looked at the mirror on my closet door. "My name is Mia. I am 15 years old. To my mother and stepfather, I am a line item. A liability to be liquidated to cover their embezzlement. They think I am a frightened child. They think I am stupid. They forgot that I've lived in this house of lies my entire life. I learned to lie before I learned to ride a bike. I can do it," I told Julian. "Good. I'll initiate the setup. The broker will be in touch. Get some sleep, kid. You're going to need it." I hung up and hid the phone again. I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. I didn't sleep. I lay there and rehearsed my smile. They wanted to sell me. Fine. I'd make sure they paid the highest price imaginable. I packed my bag with the precision of a soldier preparing for deployment. The Blackwood estate was a mausoleum of marble and glass, a place where dust dared not settle and warmth went to die. My bedroom looked like a page from a catalog, pristine, beige, and utterly devoid of life. That was Patricia's touch. My mother didn't raise children. She curated them. I folded the cashmere sweaters she'd bought for the trip. "You need to look the part, Mia," she'd said when she handed them to me. "The Swiss appreciate quality." She wasn't talking about the fabric. She was talking about the merchandise. For 15 years, I thought I was just a disappointment. The daughter who wasn't quite pretty enough, smart enough, or charming enough to justify the expense of her existence. Dinner conversations were audits. Charles would inspect my report card like a stock portfolio, tapping his finger against any grade below an A. Patricia would critique my smile, my hair, the way I held my fork. "We have high standards," Charles would say, pouring himself a scotch that cost more than my first car would have. "We expect a return on our investment." They made me feel small. They made me feel like a burden they were gracious enough to carry. But while they were busy appraising me, I was auditing them. They thought my silence was submission. They thought my hours spent in the library were for studying. They forgot that when you treat a person like a piece of furniture, they learn to hear everything you say when you think no one is listening. I knew about the second mortgage before the bank sent the notice. I knew about the creative accounting at Charles's firm before the SEC started sniffing around. And I knew the combination to the wall safe in the study. It wasn't hard. Charles was a narcissist, not a genius. I tried my birthday, it stayed locked. I tried Patricia's birthday, nothing. Then I typed in the date he bought his vintage Porsche 911. The lock clicked open instantly. Inside, I found the real ledger. The debts. The frantic loans to pay off other loans. The embezzlement scheme he'd been running for 5 years to keep up the appearance of a billionaire lifestyle. They were drowning. And I was the life raft they intended to burn to keep warm. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was sharp. Final. They looked at me and saw a naive girl who would do anything to please them. A girl who would get on a plane to Switzerland and never ask why she couldn't come back. They didn't see the wolf sitting at their table. I walked to the mirror and practiced my smile again. It was the same smile I'd worn at 1,000 stuffy dinner parties. The same smile I'd used when they criticized my weight or my friends. It was a mask of perfect, obedient gratitude. It was the last thing they would ever see before the trap snapped shut. The drive to the airport hotel was a study in suffocation. Charles drove his Range Rover like he was outrunning a fire. His knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror every 30 seconds. He wasn't looking for traffic. He was looking for the debt collectors who had started calling the house line 3 days ago. The air conditioning was blasting, but I could smell the sour tint of his sweat. I sat in the back seat, my hands folded in my lap, watching the city blur into the gray concrete of the industrial corridor. "Stop checking your phone, Charles," my mother hissed. "You're making me nervous." "I'm checking the market," he lied. He was checking to see if his assets had been frozen yet. Patricia smoothed her skirt and turned in her seat to look at me. She wore her country club luncheon face, the soft smile she used when she was about to lie to a neighbor about why the caterers were late. "You're going to love the school, Mia," she said. Her voice was bright, brittle glass. The brochure said the campus overlooks the Alps. Imagine that view every morning. Fresh air. Culture. It's an opportunity most girls would kill for. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking just past my ear. At the headrest. She couldn't make eye contact. "I'm very grateful," I said. The lie tasted like copper. "We just want you to be happy," she continued, gaining momentum now. "We know things have been tense at home. This is a fresh start. A chance for you to become a young woman of the world." She reached back and patted my knee. Her hand was ice cold. Then came the performance. The moment she needed to convince herself that she wasn't a monster. "You have to understand, Mia," she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "We are doing this for you. Do you know how hard this is for us? Charles and I. We're staying behind to clean up the mess. We're going to have to downsize. We're going to have to struggle. We are taking on all the burden, all the debt, just so we can afford to send you away to safety." I watched her face contort into a mask of noble suffering. "We are sacrificing everything," she said. A single, perfect tear welled in her eye. "Because that's what parents do. We sacrifice so our children can fly." I swallowed the scream building in my throat. She actually believed it. She had twisted the narrative so tightly that in her mind, selling her daughter for $250,000 was an act of martyrdom. She wasn't trafficking me. She was saving me. She was the hero of this tragedy. It was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen. I looked out the window to hide the revulsion in my eyes. "Thank you, Mom," I whispered. "I know exactly what this is costing you." She didn't hear the double meaning. She just sighed, relieved that her conscience had been absolved by her victim. The car swerved off the highway, tires crunching on the gravel shoulder, before correcting onto the ramp for the airport plaza. We weren't going to the terminal. We were heading to the sleek, glass-paneled hotel that sat adjacent to the private runway. Charles pulled up to the valet. He threw the keys at the attendant with a shaking hand. "Room 404, he muttered to Patricia. "He's waiting." I stepped out of the car. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I looked at the hotel entrance. It didn't look like a crime scene. It looked like a business trip. Charles grabbed my suitcase. "Let's go. Don't drag your feet." I followed them inside. They walked fast, eager to get the check, eager to be done with me. They thought they were walking toward their salvation. They didn't know they were walking into a cage I'd built with their own secrets. The elevator ride to the 4th floor took an eternity. I watched the floor numbers tick upward in the reflection of the brass doors. Charles was vibrating with nervous energy, tapping his foot against the marble floor. Patricia was fixing her lipstick for the 5th time, checking her teeth in a compact mirror. "Remember," Charles muttered, not looking at me. "You wanted this. You wanted to travel. Don't embarrass us." He was still selling the lie, even when there was no one left to buy it. The doors slid open. We walked down a hallway that smelled of lemon polish and expensive silence. Room 404 was at the end. A corner suite. Charles knocked. A sharp, confident rap. The door opened immediately. Julian stood there. He wasn't the scruffy private investigator I'd met in the park 3 weeks ago. He was transformed. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than my parents' car, a watch that glinted under the recessed lighting, and an expression of absolute, terrifying control. He looked exactly like the kind of man who moved human cargo for a living. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood," Julian said. His voice was smooth, like bourbon over ice. "Please, come in." The suite was sterile. White leather furniture, glass tables, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway where a private jet sat waiting. It was perfect theater. I walked in last. Julian's eyes flicked to me cold, appraising, impersonal. He played his part flawlessly. He didn't look at me like a person. He looked at me like a shipment. "Sit," Julian commanded. Patricia and Charles sat on the sofa. I took the armchair in the corner, folding my hands in my lap. The invisible daughter. Julian didn't offer drinks. He didn't make small talk. He picked up a sleek black tablet from the coffee table and set it down in front of Charles. "Let's skip the pleasantries," Julian said. "You're here for the liquidity. I'm here for the asset." Charles stared at the screen. It displayed a banking interface. Dark background, gold text. A logo for a private bank in Zurich. In the center of the screen, a number glowed in gray text. $250,000. "This is a blind trust," Julian explained, tapping the screen. "Untraceable by the IRS. Shielded from your creditors. Currently, the funds are locked." He held up his right hand. Biometric release. "Once we conclude our business." I scan my thumb. The funds turn green. The transfer executes instantly to the offshore account number you provided. You walk out of here solvent. I saw the tension drain out of Charles's shoulders. It was physical. He slumped back, a look of pure, unadulterated salvation washing over his face. He understood this language. He understood hidden money. The technology didn't scare him. It comforted him. It meant this was professional. "Excellent," Charles breathed. "That's excellent. However," Julian said. The word hung in the air. Charles stiffened. "Is there a problem?" "There is a risk," Julian corrected. He leaned back against the desk, crossing his arms. "My client values privacy above all else. This transaction is delicate. If you decide to grow a conscience next week, or if you get squeezed by the feds for your other financial issues, you might try to cut a deal. You might tell them, 'I kidnapped your daughter.'" Patricia let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "We would never. I don't rely on trust, Mrs. Blackwood." Julian cut her off. "I rely on leverage." He pulled a single sheet of paper and a heavy fountain pen from his jacket pocket. He slid them across the glass table. "I need insurance." "Mutually assured destruction." Charles frowned, picking up the pen. "What is this?" Julian calmly laid out the deal. A written confession. Charles would document every crime. Embezzlement, falsified accounts, defrauded investors. Sign it, and seal it in digital escrow, with the transfer receipt. "If I fall, you fall," Julian murmured. "Stay silent, and the file stays buried. No prison. Everyone wins." The room went still. Charles wasn't horrified he was trapped, and Julian had offered him escape. "Smart," Charles said, smiling as he picked up the pen. He didn't hesitate. He wrote everything. Accounts siphoned. Taxes evaded. A Ponzi scheme built on clients' trust. He dated and signed it, then handed it over. "Mutually assured destruction," Charles said. "Release the funds." Julian accepted the confession and slid the tablet forward. "Guardianship transfer. Travel consent. Sign these." The lock disengages. "The money's yours." Patricia reached for the pen, shaking with hunger, staring at the frozen $250,000 on the screen. "Wait," I spoke softly. I needed one final admission, not fraud, but trafficking. Proof they knew exactly what they were selling. "Mom," I asked calmly, "once the money hits, do you care where they take me?" Silence stretched. "School? Labor camp? Never coming back?" She didn't answer. She was irritated. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "This is for the family. Just sign." That was the truth. Julian met my eyes briefly. The wire was live. Charles signed. Patricia followed. Funds released. Charles sagged with relief. Julian stood. "Pleasure doing business." "What about Mia?" Patricia asked. Julian smiled coldly. "She's exactly where she needs to be." The door shut. Then the deadbolt clicked outside. They turned to the table. My phone lay there, displaying a countdown. 3. "What did you do?" Charles shouted. 1, I said. "I audited you." The adjoining door burst open. 6 FBI agents entered. "Charles Blackwood," the lead agent said. "That looks like a signed confession." Charles collapsed. Patricia screamed at me as they cuffed her. 6 months later. They pled guilty. 20 years for fraud. 15 more for attempted human trafficking. The estate was seized. Everything auctioned. As for me, I didn't go to Switzerland. I live in a small apartment. Loud neighbors. Leaky faucet. But the lease is mine. The lock is mine. Paid for with SEC whistleblower money. They thought I was a line item. They forgot I was the one keeping the books.